Have you ever met someone who was incredibly charming at first, confident, persuasive, magnetic, and then over time something felt off? Maybe because of their constant need of admiration, because they manipulated situations quietly, or maybe they seemed emotionally cold or unusually fearless. Psychology has a term for a cluster of traits like this. It's called the Dark Triad. Now, before we go further, this is not a diagnosis. It's not a way to label your ex, your boss, or a celebrity you don't like. The Dark Triad is a research framework used in personality psychology to study certain socially aversive traits. The term was introduced in 2002 by psychologists Delroy L. Paulus and Kevin M. Williams. I hope I'm pronouncing them right. They observed that three traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, tend to overlap in interesting ways. They are different, but they share a core feature, low empathy combined with self interest. Now, let's look at each trait individually. First, narcissism. A very common word, and almost everybody knows what it means. And we often use this term to label people. In this context, narcissism refers to an inflated sense of self importance, combined with a strong need for admiration. Individuals high in narcissistic traits tend to view themselves as superior or special, seek validation and praise, be sensitive to criticism, display confidence and social charm. Psychological research distinguishes between grandiose narcissism, which is bold and dominant, and vulnerable narcissism, which involves insecurity but still revolves around self focus. It is also important to distinguish narcissism from healthy self esteem. Confidence becomes problematic in this framework when it is accompanied by entitlement and reduced empathy. Second, Machiavellianism. This term is so hard to pronounce. Machiavellianism is named after Niccolo Machiavelli, whose political writings emphasized strategic power and pragmatic decision making. In personality psychology, Machiavellianism refers to a tendency towards strategic manipulation and emotional detachment. People scoring high in this trait are often described as calculating, long term planners, pragmatic and outcome focused, comfortable using influence or deception if it benefits them. Unlike narcissism, Machiavellianism is less about seeking admiration and more about achieving control or advantage. And we can often observe these traits in people with high authority. Not everyone is same, but we can still point out some people with this trait. Compared to psychopathy, it tends to involve more planning and less impulsivity. It is often known to use any form of relationship as tool to achieve their goals. Third, psychopathy. In research on Dark Triad, psychopathy refers to subclinical traits found in everyday populations, not necessarily criminal or clinical diagnosis. Key characteristics include low empathy, low guilt, emotional shallowness, impulsivity, and fearlessness. Psychopathy differs from Machiavellianism in that it is generally more impulsive and less strategic. It differs from narcissism in that it does not require admiration or validation. In simple terms, narcissism seeks admiration, Machiavellianism seeks control. Psychopathy reflects emotional detachment and boldness. Although distinct, these three traits overlap in important ways. Research shows they are all associated with reduced empathy, self serving interpersonal behavior, manipulation in certain contexts, short term social advantage. Some studies suggest individuals high in these traits may initially appear charismatic or confident, which can contribute to leadership emergence or social influence. However, long term relational stability is often lower. The Dark Triad. Some researchers have proposed adding a fourth trait, sadism, which involves deriving pleasure from others' suffering. When included, the model is referred to as the Dark Triad. However, sadism differs conceptually from original three traits because it focuses on enjoyment of harm rather than primarily self interest or manipulation. While the Dark Triad framework is widely used, it is not without criticism. Although Paulus and Williams originally treated narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy as distinct constructs, some researchers argue they overlap significantly, especially in aspects like low empathy and self interest, and may partially reflect broader dimensions of personality in the Big Five model. Another issue concerns measurement. Different psychological scales assess these traits in different ways, and results can vary depending upon how they are operationalized. Additionally, much of the research has been conducted on Western university populations, raising questions about cultural generalization. Beyond measurement, studies indicate that gender differences tend to appear in dark triad scores. Research consistently finds that male population tend to score higher on these traits than female population, particularly on psychopathy measures. But in recent times, it has been found that the difference is decreasing. Some psychologists interpret this in terms of social and evolutionary influences on personality expression, although a specific cause remains under investigation. Finally, it is important to emphasize that these are dimensional traits. Everyone may exhibit small degree of these tendencies in certain situations. The framework does not categorize people as entirely dark or not dark. The dark triad has become influential because it helps researchers examine workplace behavior, leadership dynamics, interpersonal relationships, short term versus long term social strategies. It provides a structured way to study socially aversive personality traits without reducing them to clinical disorders. To summarize, the Dark Triad is a personality framework that groups together narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy due to their shared characteristics of low empathy and self serving behavior. Each trait is distinct in motivation and expression, and each exists on a spectrum. The framework continues to evolve as researchers debate its structure, measurement, and cultural applicability. Understanding the dark triad is not about labeling individuals. It is about understanding patterns within personality research and how certain traits influence behavior in social environments. And like all psychological constructs, it remains an active area of study rather than a fixed conclusion. Bye. I will meet you with my next topic soon.